The people of Bolivia spoke clearly against the attempt of a new nomination of President Evo Morales. Therefore, we strongly urge the government and all state officials to respect the vote of the people. Any attempt to force a new nomination of the president will be unconstitutional and will be turning the back on the unalienable sovereignty of Bolivians.
Bolivia's President Evo Morales wants a fourth term in office. The Constitution says no. And last year, voters said no, upholding term limits in a referendum. But Morales and his party won't be deterred. They've sent a challenge to the Supreme Court, hoping to change the rules, not just for the presidency, but also for governors, mayors and legislators. They argue the Constitution violates the right of Bolivians to participate freely in politics, while the opposition is calling the move a power grab attempt. Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now from La Paz by Raul Peñaranda. He's a prominent journalist, author and advocate for freedom of expression in Bolivia. So thank you very much for joining us. So tell us why Evo Morales' party wants to change the Constitution. Is there any good that can come out of them wanting to change the Constitution to get him to run for another term?
No, there's nothing positive of this situation. Look, last year, Bolivians voted in a referendum. The government called for that referendum to change the Constitution, and Bolivians said no. Now the government wants to change the Constitution through a very unusual way, going to the Constitutional Court, asking if the human rights of the president are being violated by the Constitution, because the Constitution says that he can run only twice. Already is in his third term, but he's trying to change the Constitution through this very unusual way. This is going to polarize Bolivian society. I don't think that is going to have a positive outcome.
If the people voted against changing the Constitution to remove term limits, then why don't the Bolivian people let them get away with it now and change it? Because ultimately, if he runs again, they just don't have to vote him into office.
Well, it's a possibility, but our democracy is weak. We had a fair and free elections last year when we did the referendum, but now there is the possibility that some electoral rules could change. So we don't know if he can run again. We don't know how those elections would be in the future. But you're right. The polls in Bolivia show that he wouldn't win the next elections if he runs. But that's in the case that we have a free vote. And that's now also a doubt.
Okay, so let me look at what some of the government supporters have been saying and what Morales himself has been saying. Some of the supporters and sympathetic media, Telesur and others, have been saying that right-wing smears about his sex scandal from 2014 were used to change people's minds last year in that referendum, and therefore that's why the people were misled into not accepting this particular decision. He himself has said the separation of powers in government is at the service of the American empire because it generates judicial coups to anti-capitalist presidents such as himself. He's spoken about it being an imperial tool. Tell me how much this sort of message resonates among people in the country.
Of course, he resonates with his base. He has an important electoral base. He's 11 years in power, and he is quite popular even now. But the thing is this. To change the Constitution, you have to call for a referendum. And he doesn't want to call for a referendum, so this thing about a lie and that the Bolivians voted in a dumb way last year doesn't make any sense. Because if he's sure of that, he could call for a new referendum and see what happens. But because he's sure that he's going to lose a referendum again. So this is why he's going through this constitutional court to change the Constitution. It doesn't make any sense that all Bolivians or part of Bolivians are so dumb and we voted for a lie. Doesn't make any sense.
Is Morales sliding towards authoritarianism?
When he was in his second term, he said that he was not going to run for a third one. And then when when the court allowed him to run for this third term, He promised not to run for a fourth time. We have political prisoners. We have the media who's under threat. We have exiles. This doesn't seem like a very good democracy. If he keeps in power, I think that our democratic rights are going to be diminished. As the same case in Venezuela, I think that Bolivia is going to that path of authoritarianism.
Is it easy to talk about things like this within Bolivia right now? Is that one of the few things that you can at least still do, whether it's talking about the railroad project with the Chinese firm or the sex scandal from 2014 and so on? Can it be spoken about easily and openly?
Not very easily. For example, the chance that I have to talk to you, to your TV network, I don't have that chance in Bolivia to talk to many media outlets in Bolivia. The social network and social media are much more freer, but media outlets are in the majority co-opted by the government, controlled by the government, so it's not very easy. We have freedom of expression, but there are very, very few media outlets that can really be said that are independent or critical to the government. We used to have a very vibrant media scenario in Bolivia, but it's not the case anymore because, as I said, the government controls most of the media and press outlets of the country.
Raul Peñaranda, I thank you very much for joining us on the Newsmakers.